Well, here we are once again. We are lighting the candle, a world that works, and I am Bill Carell. I've got with me my two best buddiettes, Lisa Sheehan and Jan Jeremias. And it's quite an interesting day today. And I use the word interesting simply because there are things going on that I don't know, and I don't have any kind of a clue of what's going to happen. And I'm kind of excited about that. A lot of energy, a lot of good things going on. And I thought maybe today, instead of having a word against another word, what if we just talked about memories and all the versions thereof? You know, the memories that you remember that are true, the memories that you remember that might not be. And how about all the memories that you've forgotten until something reminds you of them? Or the memories that you've completely forgotten and never have any access to? So, is that a big enough playing field for us today?
I'd say so.
All righty then. So, who would like to go first?
Well, I bet you Jan's been both of you have probably been dealing with a lot of memories.
Yeah.
With current situations going on. So I think when you're dealing with harder situations, memories come flooding back to sometimes help and sometimes not help. So, because I also had actually this past weekend, I met up with a co-worker that we haven't seen in over 2 decades. And
Mm,
in the interim, he's lost his wife, who we knew as well. Um, but he's been out of communication with a lot of people, and he's frail and he's diabetic and he's fallen a couple times and he's in his mid 70s, but the memories that he wanted to share with us, and he was just so happy to see people that knew and cared about him, that it was kind of amazing thing to, and then to juxtapose that with the picture I know that he had on his shelf of when I worked with him, and it was so startlingly different from the man I was looking at that day.
Yeah, it's interesting as I dealing with first of all dealing with someone who's losing their memory right now. And so I'm I'm confronted by looking at someone and like Lisa remembering that and reminding myself that this isn't the person that's right in front of me right now, that that's just a shell of the person that was, but also being so stressed and so kind of in my own world with all that's going on is realizing what I'm forgetting.
yeah.
Like today, I couldn't remember like a password that I have that I use like every day, and it totally freaking me out. Like I'm sitting there going like, "Oh my gosh, like how could I not remember that?" And I had to look it up, and realizing that I'm like, and how anxiety causing that is. But I think the amazing thing is like as I watch my dad, is the things that he does remember is just yesterday in one of his moments he was going through and he was talking about like he was talking about like his aunts and uncles and family members and everything, and he said and she had a dog and the dog's name was Happy, like I mean kind of thing, and the things that come in are just like you can't believe he remembers, and then other things were just not there.
It's kind of remarkable. It's like whenever I am speaking with somebody who's upset, and I ask them, to close their eyes for a moment and think about the last time they were truly happy. And then I say, no, not that time. Think about the last time you were truly happy. And they get there and they get this grin on their face. And then I say, well, no, not that one. I mean, the one when you were last truly happy. And of course, as many times as I say that, they're going to remember a different thing that brings some joy to their heart. And then after doing that 6, 7, 8, 9 times, however many times I judge in the situation that it takes for that person to truly have shifted their state, I ask, now, how do you feel? And he said, well, I'm happy. I
Mhm.
said, well, are you upset? Oh, damn right I'm upset, but I'm happy. So, it just kind of it strikes me that sometimes we make choices about which memories we're going to empower, right? That's the old Indian tale, the two wolves on your shoulders, the one that's telling you good stuff, the one that's telling you bad stuff. And the question is, well, which wolf wins? And the answer is the one you feed.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's the same kind of a thing. And I like the idea of the power of a positive mental attitude. Because it is a concept. There is no such thing as a positive mental attitude. It's a concept for everyone to explore and discover what it means for them. But essentially, a prevailing uh, set of memories that you can rely on, making you happy in any instant, not like Pollyanna happy where you're faking it, and it's really inauthentic, but where you can reconnect with something that absolutely brings you joy, and shift that, whatever, from fear or anger or any type of a state that you really are not appreciating that you're in right now. You do have some choices that you can make, and with a little bit of work, the amount of time that you waste being in a state of powerlessness becomes smaller and smaller. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I've been, well, the power of negative thinking because we're all so good at it. And,
Yeah.
listening to neuroscientists that say, it's natural that we are so good at it because it's a human like conundrum almost because you build that neural pathway of negativity and every time something hits you that's negative your ego alarms it by sending out every other bad thing that's ever happened. So the only thing to do is that I've been told was to stop it and to replace it, like you said, Bill, with a positive memory or a happy memory, and to stop telling the story of what's going on. I have a friend that every time she's anxious, she calls every person she knows and tells everybody the same story over and over and over again. So she's making these neural pathways highways,
Yeah.
and I just try to, I tell her to stop, to think of something different. Look around, do the five senses thing, look around the room, and bring yourself back to the present moment. There's beauty in the present moment, and you can be able to find it if you take the time to stop and smell the roses, as they say.
Lisa, for some of us who aren't familiar with the five senses thing that you just presenced, is there like a step that we could talk about, or you could say, that this is how access the five senses thing?
Well, you literally just stop and look at something. Use your sense of sight, use your sense of touch. You can either just close your eyes and feel the clothes on your body or your body sitting in the chair that you're sitting in. you know Sense of smell and taste are always there, and you could ask, if you want to really play with them and literally taste something or smell something, but you don't have to. There's something always there that you can bring up. And then hearing is one of my favorites because you can start with the hearing, the sounds that are in the room, and then see how far out you can go with your listening, and then stay there for a minute. And then all of a sudden you're in the present moment. You open your eyes and you just look around and everything kind of looks a little different. And so your breathing slows down. Just it's a natural stress reducer, so to speak. And then you're in the present moment. And then the other thing is too, we just practice this is they've done studies about just simply smiling, even if it's a forced smile,
Yeah.
how that will actually tell your body different signals and bring you into a different state. So I thought that was cool.
And it makes you so much better looking.
And it's free.
Yes, it is. A renewable resource.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Every little tip and tidbit that we can give people so that they can have a fully self-expressed life that is minimally attacked by those negative feelings, and where we've been trained all of our lives to go when we're not sure what the future holds, right?
And I would add that I love that. And I guide people like Lisa, or do that myself as much as I can, but also using movement. And so consciously moving. So we do a lot of movements where we don't even realize we're moving, you know. But if you actually do focus on the movement, and then, from the beginning of that movement to the end, and you can follow it through, as you lift your arm, actually being very conscious of the fact that you're lifting your arm, even watch it
Yeah.
and visualize it, and then even close your eyes and do it, or close your eyes and then don't even do it, and just recreate the feeling of what it was like. And
Hmm.
that doesn't cost anything either.
Mhm.
What's kind of neat about the conversation is that we started and kicked off with the word memories, and what comes to mind is there was a conversation I had with somebody in the last 2 or 3 weeks, that 98% of people's thoughts are either based on something that happened in the past, or worrying about something that may or may not happen in the future. And 2% of the time is actually being completely present and fully available, to the world where they are right now. And I thought that just spells opportunity to me, because let's say that it's half right. Maybe 60% of the time we're worried about the future or the past, and 40% of the time we're actually where we are right now, enjoying this moment with no other thoughts, encroaching. Knowing that whatever level it's at right now, that what if you do have choices? What if there are some things that you can do, and the memories that you have, um, they're going to continuously be triggered by things that you see or that you experience earlier, similar incidents, that sort of thing. But one of the key uh, training methods that I use is the method of object orientation, and that basically means that if you want something to exist and persist through time, it has to be attached to an object. And if you think about it, that's one of the reasons that we put up statues, and we have, memorial, headstones and all that sort of thing, so that somebody's name will live on into the future, and some person who will, never having met them, that person and the idea of that person will continue to live on forever. So you bring it all the way back from the monument and buildings and structures and all that sort of thing, back to sticky notes, right? So if you've got a thought and you want it to exist through time, you write it down on a sticky note and you put it somewhere. And the really cool part of it is that I remember being with two clients that used a half a pad of sticky notes every day. It was like they were so worried about forgetting the thoughts that they had. And so we had some neat conversations about that. So, what do you put on your sticky note? Well, I put something on it that I want to be reminded of later. And I look at the wall, and there's got to be 700 sticky notes there, all different colors. We got green ones, yellow ones, blue ones, red ones, pink, the whole 9 yards. And I said, so, all right, so what's your filing system here? I noticed that you don't have them gathered in groups. He said, no, I don't want to have them gathered in groups. But my oldest sticky notes are on that wall over there. My newest ones are on this wall behind me. And quite frankly, what's really interesting about all of these sticky notes is I really enjoy writing them. I said, cool. Do you ever go back and look at them? No, I don't go back and look at them. Why would I do that? They're there. This is an interesting conversation. And I'm saying, They made a movie about a guy that did some similar stuff, Beautiful Mind. And I said, "Are you concerned that this might be like an OCD kind of thing?" He said, "No, I can give it up anytime I want to. I'm just playing a game to see how long it takes me to fill all four walls."
Really?
I said, "And then what?" He said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll put plastic over the top of them and use it as kind of like a wallpaper or something. And then, my friends can come over and they can walk around and read all the different little sticky notes and everything. And we'll just have stuff to talk about."
On sticky notes was the sign that my grandmother was losing it. She was living in Florida, and when we went down there were sticky notes everywhere, but it was the same, like the plumber point, the same notes in different places.
Yep.
And she had no clue, and she just would repetitively put the same note over and over again on sticky notes. And
yeah.
And during COVID, I did sticky notes on the wall of things I was grateful for. I had a whole wall. I had a whole wall in my kitchen that I ended up doing. And I did it because, I went from doing a gratitude journal, which I used to do periodically, but I liked having the sticky notes. And even if I never read them, it was just a point in my day where when I would turn around and glance at the wall, I used to just realize, because each day I would write one. So as days and days went on, just to see the things that I had that many things to be grateful for was just a great reminder to me of, as hard as life gets, there's still so much to be grateful for. So I was like, that was my sticky note obsession.
Yeah.
How different they all are.
Well, that's inspirational and inspired, because at least you can go and you can read however many for a minute or two and get yourself right back to being in action and empowered again. I really like that a lot. The funny part of it is, human beings are objects as well, right?
Mhm.
Especially children, have you ever noticed that if you share a thought or a possibility out loud with somebody and you don't see them for a while, the first thing out of their mouth is, "Oh, how are you doing with your weight loss?" I haven't seen them in 3 years, but how did that weight loss thing go? Did you ever make it out to Colorado to see your grandchildren? It's like seeing you triggers them to remember what, and then it's just like this, and you're right back to where you were before. So that's another little tidbit that I use. If you want people to remind you of what a great life you have and what you're grateful for, then put those kind of sticky notes in them. It's like, I really love hanging out with you because, and then fill in whatever is authentic about it. And when they think about you, you know what they're going to think about? If you say enough positive things to them, they're going to think, "I can't wait to be with that rascal." We always cut up. We have a good time, whether or not we're having beer, we don't need to have alcohol to have a great time. Right. And in the meantime, we've got all these really wonderful things. And if you've got something that is powerful to leave with people and make an impression on them, the words "I love you," not bad. Really not bad. We've got another whole podcast. We talked about love and "I love you." But the point is, step further in any moment where you're feeling afraid or anxious or angry or worried, I really suggest that you stand up, hop up and down for about 10 seconds, and then as loudly as you can, declare what you love about your life. You cannot be angry and talking about what you love in your life. I'm going to mute. You keep going. This is an important call.
I was just going to say, Jan, that when I was talking about well, actually watching a YouTube video about creativity and how
Mhm,
people discount their actual creativity and their thinking. Like anytime you change something, like we're talking about, like change to a happiness setting kind of thing,
mhm.
but you could be creative in recreating how you feel about mornings, or which I've done. I used to hate them, and then so now mornings are my favorite thing in the world. I take walks every day, but that was being a creative thinker and
Mhm.
re-looking at my whole viewpoint of that and how silly things are that you thought, just because they're hard to be, that's how you were taught, or that's what you thought you should do kind of thing. Um, anyway.
Yeah, but I think another way to get out of, sometimes get into a more happy mode, or um, if you want to think about memories, I think music is very profound, um,
Mhm,
at putting someone in a really great mood. So the gentleman who's in my who's sharing my father's hospital room, um, is an I don't know how old he is, but he had a stroke. He was in the hospital, went to rehab, and now he's been in the hospital for 3 weeks. And so now he's not communicative. And so his daughter and his wife came in yesterday, and she put an iPhone next to his head of music, and you could just see his expression change. It was so amazing to watch. I mean, not talking, not communicating at all, but you could just see he like had a gentle smile came to his face and everything. And I was like, it just struck me so much, that the power of something like that. And for when someone's agitated or something, and so you know some people out there might think it's hokey, but sometimes when you said, feel the touch of your clothes, and I said sometimes it's just feeling your own hand
Your
on
skin. Yeah.
on your skin or on your heart and just holding it, and that can feel so securing and affirming, that and let your hand raise and fall with your breath, so that you feel your body expand and contract, and that can be so dramatic and so grounding.
The what's coming to mind for me right now is, as our parents get older, and their capacities that are available to them in every moment diminish. But if we're smart, we treat them with the love and care that we do a 2 or 3 year old. And what I mean by that is that we're always working with them and nurturing them, as opposed to being, feeling sorry for them or having regret that they're in this space that they're in. And I saw this amazing video of these people that were Alzheimer's and dementia patients playing games, where they had taken a table and stacked books along either side, and they were pushing, a balled up sock with some kind of a weight in it to be used as a puck, and they had an opening with the books, and the goal was to try to to push the sock. And there's these two like 85, 90-year-old people. They were having a ball, and they're laughing and giggling, and I mean, really. And there's also that other study, which I think you're talking about, where they found that people, when they get to hear the music when they were teenagers, they start to not concentrate on the hurts in their body and their joints and arthritis and all that sort of thing, and they'll actually just get up and dance. It really makes them feel as young as they were when they heard that music, in the early days. And that's a remarkable thing. And
Well, and
the other one that I think is really cool, because I think I get three for a quarter here, is those folks that are um, struggling with Parkinson's, that riding a bicycle
Mm-hmm.
or jogging makes all that go away for
Mm-hmm.
some strange reason while they're in action and doing some sort of an activity like that. And it almost always, being on the bicycle almost always brings up memories of like the first time that they rode a bike, and some of the happy things that happened while they were bicycling with maybe their, their first or second lover or whatever it was, and then possibly riding around in a gang of 9-year-olds, terrorizing the neighborhood on our little spider bikes, so it's an extraordinary thing, to allow people to access something that brings them into a world that they think is worth living in.
I mean, I taught a class for a number of years called Ageless Grace, which was a movement class done from a chair. You're supposed to do it from a chair.
Yeah,
Um, that's all done to music, and it is amazing. It works really well for elderly, but basically for anyone, because some of the what they call tools are really challenging and no one can do them. It's like no matter your age, they call it, spelling backwards with body parts and things like that. And you realize how hard it is, or counting in different sequences and moving your body at the same time. So you're basically your body and your brain are multitasking big time. But the study on Parkinson's was a really interesting study, because that's basically you're creating the neural pathway is being sort of stimulated, and that neural pathway continues even after you stop cycling. And it's remarkable.
exactly the word in my mind. It's touching too. I mean, actually brought tears to my eyes the first time I saw somebody, have that kind of a reaction. And they went from, the tremors and everything. They get on the bike, and which also makes me wonder, if all of the tremors are involuntary, or if some of the tremors are habit. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
people we'll do that to ourselves every once in a while.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that like a good thing or a bad thing. It's just like, um, another example would be someone who stutters. There's no scientific reason for anyone to stutter. And what's really cool is I've seen a half a dozen times, in a landmark forum, where people got up and they were willing to lose their stutter, and the forum leader worked with them for 5 or 10 minutes, and they never stuttered again. You think of people like Mel Tillis, who, when he was speaking, couldn't say a full sentence without hiccuping, but he sang
And
so
singing.
amazingly well and never stuttered while he was singing. So it's really kind of a neat thing to consider, how memories add fuel to a habit that we have, that we think is part of us, and it may not be. What if it isn't?
Right.
Well, as you were saying that, Bill, I was thinking of, because Lisa mentioned something earlier also, and that was the ability to be creative, and how it has the ability, depending on how you create and how much of a, let's say, quote unquote, zone you get in,
Yeah.
has the ability to transform you into, or transfer you into an exact moment. Um, I was a fine art minor, and I could have painted, and things could have been going on all around me, and I would not have noticed, because I was so enthralled and so into what I was doing. And for some people that's art, for some people it's music, for some people it could be gardening, and getting outside and feeling the dirt or whatever. But I think we all I don't believe there's not a person on I don't think there's a person on the face of the earth that doesn't have something like that, if they or can't find it if they're willing to look for it.
Yeah. Yeah. The being engaged thing, where using Einstein's models of behavior in terms of relativity. If you're doing something that you really, really love, it could be reading a book, or it could be doing jigsaw puzzles, or it could be talking to somebody who you really, really get a lot of enjoyment out of talking with. But hours go by and it seems like it's been minutes. You ever go out to lunch with somebody that you've met at a networking deal, and you sit down and you budgeted 45 minutes to an hour, and the next thing you know, you sat at noontime and it's 3 o'clock, and where did that time go?
The
Those
other
are
part
key.
of the creativity thing was that people don't give themselves credit for being creative, and that was going down to the thinking aspect, like, or your everyday things that you do, that if it's cooking a meal and you find a shortcut, like, or you figure out a better way to do your mornings.
Yeah.
You're constantly doing it, and nobody gives themselves credit for that. And so I was looking at that, and it's kind of cool to remember, like, how you used to do things and how you do them now,
Yes.
especially if you're trying to self improve, as many people are. The second half of life, I think, is what that's all about,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I think to give people a break and to see how creative they can be throughout the day, or how they always are, and how they can just keep ramp that up sometimes, just thinking, well, maybe if I could do that, I could do the next thing. I can improve that much more, or give myself credit.
Yeah.
Be grateful for that.
It's the continuum of competence, right? So you start off in life and there are many things that you're unconsciously incompetent to, and it's causing you no pain and you don't care and you're unaware, right? And then there's the little breakthrough when you notice somebody's doing something, or there's something that you think you can't do, where you are now consciously incompetent, and it is bothering you a little bit, and maybe you'd like to do something about it. So then you go through the baby steps and you figure out what's going on, and you start to get this conscious competence where you have to think about it while you're doing it. And it's at the level of, it's like crossing your arms the opposite way. It feels a little bit awkward. And then you start to get to that point where you're starting to get a little bit of mastery. And then all of a sudden it's a habit and you're unconsciously competent to the point where you don't even notice what you're doing any longer, exactly what you said, Lisa. And that unconscious competence is where we get stronger as human beings, and we have more things that we know we can do. And the more history that we have of being able to accomplish something, the more likely that we are to continue taking on things that we're pretty sure we can't do, which I think is fantastic.
And I always have my students in class, so we'll say interlace your fingers and then have them do it the non-habitual way.
Mhm.
And people will say to me, and I've gotten to the point where I don't know my habitual way anymore. Like, I really no longer have one after all these years, because
Yeah.
I've been doing it for so long, both ways, that both feel normal now, and
Mhm.
both feel like they just are. But for a while, when I was very conscious of my body habits and trying to do, or my habits and trying to do things differently, something as simple as brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, and all of a sudden having to, because you really have to think about it and talk about being in the present moment. You really do have to, because otherwise you get toothpaste all over your face, like it's so, and all of a
Or
sudden,
all over your beard.
or all over your beard. And you sit there and you're like, okay, like, and you realize, or just even getting a picture out with your like, we all have our tendencies. I'm a righty. I always get I'll always grab something with my right hand. And then all of a sudden having to switch. And that's actually very good for the brain, because the
Mhm.
brain is very used to us doing stuff in habitual ways. And if you want to develop neuroplasticity, keeping your brain more malleable, um, start to do little practices like that.
So one of the things when I first started coaching people, um, and many of the people had accomplished many great things, in their lives, but they weren't sure how they did them. And so to really kind of bring this down to something that everyone can do, I had them start by printing their name with the hand that they don't use. And
Mm.
you have no idea, a group of 15 people, 14 of them said, I can't do that. I'll never be able to do that. Are you kidding me? Why are you asking me to do something stupid like that? So we just stayed with it. And then there were 12 that were resisting. And then there were 8 that were resisting. And finally, as they started to get the letters formed a little bit with their opposite hand, the world is looking for me today. All right. So they're going to have to wait. So at the end of the first session, I basically said, I would like you to spend at least 5 minutes a day working on this. And then when you get to the point when you can print your name, I want you to switch to cursive and do it with your opposite hand. And let's just see where everybody is when we get back together for the next session. And again, there was more. I mean, I'm a busy person. I don't have time for this crap. What's wrong with you? Well, you want to know what? Every last person came in and they were able to write their first name in cursive. But when we got together the next time, they were not going to look bad in front of all the other people. It was fantastic.
And excited to claim that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to say that, Bill, because one of the nice things I think sometimes about having an accountability person is because it's hard sometimes to make those changes or in our daily habits, or really make an effort to shift let's say, just even shift your mindset in a situation. And having somebody who you said you're going to do something, or I'm going to try to work on this. And then when they call you out on it, like you said, even a friend that's reminded, but to purposefully call you out on it. And
Yes.
You have to say, you don't want to have to say you didn't try or you failed. Or maybe you can say that, but then they'll come back at you and say, okay, well, what can you do different this week?
You'll really get a giggle out of 2 things that I have to share with you about that. The first one is how they all had to, and then when I got to this point, then I had to do, what was it? Yeah, me too. It was almost like, now you guys can go out and you can start amassing fortunes, and accomplishing things in the world. But you know where I got the idea from? I went to Catholic school through the 3rd grade. And I don't know if either one of you probably didn't go to Catholic school, but in the Catholic school, if you wrote with your left hand, that was an immediate swat, with a ruler. The left hand was the devil's hand. Okay. And so you had these kids that were able to print, and all that kind of thing, and with their left hand. Now they had to learn how to write with their right hand, or they would get crushed with a ruler. And so I tried that again, myself, to see if I could write with my left hand. And I used to be able to do it fairly well until I was about 10 or 11 years old and stopped doing it. And it's not like riding a bicycle. I'm starting over from no skill at all to try to do it now. But that's kind of a really simple thing to demonstrate to people that when they make a decision, they're going to do something until it works. You can do anything.
It's like going back to chat, like you learned how to write with your dominant hand too. You for the most part, nobody ever not walks, as a child.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the world behaved with us as adults when we wanted to take on something that was
Right.
hard, like walking and speaking and swimming and riding a bike? No, you
Right.
can do it. Keep going.
That's right. And the whole acknowledgement when you did, the fact that when a kid walks or takes a step, the applause they get and the
Yeah.
acknowledgement, everybody is so excited. Even they're excited. Like, even if nobody's around and you watch them,
Yes.
I'm watching my friend's granddaughter when she comes to class each week on Zoom. And I've watched her from like 2 months to now she's about 2. So I've watched her every week. And it's hysterical. Like when she falls and she claps, or she'll fall down and she thinks it's hysterical and she claps for herself, like kind of thing. That self acknowledgement, where we become so judgmental of ourselves and so cautious to, we remember spinning around when you were a kid and purposely falling down and you thought it was hysterical.
Yeah.
How we lose that ability to find the humor and the joy in just things like that of not being able to do things.
Yeah. So it's amazing. There are so many metaphors for life, and I think playing Texas Hold'em poker is one that I like to reflect on quite frequently because I've got a lot of hours into that game. And I just made a decision in 2005 and 2006 that I was going to become not a good but a great Texas Hold'em poker player. And I went out and was playing free poker at bars, where you would tip the dealer, and there was no money for the for the chips to buy in or anything like that because that would be against the law. And I started playing 5 nights a week.
Mm.
You know, every single week I went out for 5 nights a week. Within the sessions were 2.5 to 3 hours, and I got to the point where when I sat down at a table with other people that were similar skill level, I would get to the to the final three, final two, and then I started getting wins, and then I got to the point where I won most of the time, and had a reputation. There were two people that we had a reputation of being the toughest ones to beat in free no limit Texas Hold'em poker, right? And so the point was, somebody asked me, "Are you like a natural poker player?" I said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "Well, how did you get so good?" Well, I sat down and I said, out of every evening that I come out, there's going to be 25 or 30 people competing against me, some of whom will do really stupid things and win. And I'll have no reason, to learn anything from that. But you know what? There's always, out of those 30 people, only one winner. Everyone else loses every single time. So there's always only going to be one winner. And so I my goal is to learn how to be the person who's always got the opportunity to get to the top, final three or four, so I can be that winner. And then when I figured out how to do that, a lot of times my reputation would win a hand for me, which was kind of fun. But I told you that story to basically tell you that you can make decisions to do any darn thing you want to in your entire life, and just don't stop till you're done. Sounds
My
like
accountability partner right now is an app. So,
That's right.
I signed on to do that, but one of the, it's you might enjoy this. It's wall Pilates, Jan.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a routine that you do I do it every morning, but at the end of it, there's actually the screen goes all applause and thumbs up. It's like it is my little joy exercise every morning, seeing that screen pop up.
Yes, I'm sure it is. But if you don't have an app and you just, I always say that it's measured by, well, that app or that applause is actually obviously giving you some sort of hormonal or feel good response.
Right.
And for me, when I practice, it's just how I feel, like, that measurement of, if I want to do a scale, it's like, how do I feel right now and how did I feel at the end? If I were to put a number to it, okay, well, right now, if 10's the highest, I wake up or whatever and I feel a 3, or and when I end, how do I feel? And feel an 8 or a 7. And then if you can, if you're a numerical person, or even if you just get that feeling, and that's what keeps you coming back, is that feeling.
That's my morning walk thing because I started that a while back, and especially if the sun's out and especially when it's cold out for some reason, the second I enter the door, I just go, that felt really good. It's just that kind of acknowledgement. And almost better than the high five screen sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like exuberance. It's just a knowing, a knowledge that felt really good physically, emotionally, and probably spiritually too.
Yeah. When I ran, I used to love winter running. Never liked summer running. It was too hot. Winter running,
Mm.
you get warm and you get in the zone, and I always loved it. It's just like I could. So
fantastic. So, how important are memories?
That's a good question. I mean, it's probably what we live on most of the day.
It's
uh-huh.
what we traffic in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
And we don't know it, really.
No, like you're saying, I know it's that high percentage. They're either repetitive thoughts or memories that you're bringing up again. But yeah, so the value is probably hard to calculate, but what would we be without them?
Yeah, the really cool thing, I mean, we talk about authenticity from time to time, and there are many different definitions of what being authentic actually is. I love the Dalai Lama, who one of my favorite quotes of his is that love and joy are, completely opposite of Buddhist teachings, right? Buddhism is based on all human beings' normal condition is suffering, right? Because you're attached to things, and that attachment causes suffering. Well, the Dalai Lama, he's on a higher plane, and he basically says that joy and love are, this is what life is about. You know, when you say joy and love and you open yourself up like that, you can give yourself goosebumps anytime you want to, every single day of your life, full wave goosebumps through your entire body just by being presence in the presence of joy and love. And then he was asked, "What do you consider your greatest failure?" And he said, "Well, that's anger." And anger is the opposite of joy and love, and it's my biggest failure. And when I feeling that, I sometimes will dwell in it long enough to see what it feels like. So I'm pretty sure I don't need to go back there again. You know,
So
let
memories
the,
being useful. Yeah.
yeah, and informational and instructive,
Mhm.
which is why when people are in a state where they're trying to push something down and not experience that emotion, like I can't go there because I'm going to cry, it's really healthy to get a great relationship with whatever that emotion is by actually dwelling in it for a period of time, not to get lost in it, but to really kind of examine what's up with that, and why was I so afraid of being, of that ultimately taking control of me and losing control, where I'm crying or having some other type of a response to the situation. Again, it's like riding a bicycle. The more familiar that becomes to you, the easier it is to transcend it and put another state in place, I say.
And I don't know how much it can come into play, but I was listening. I don't know if you know Chelsea Handler, the comedian, and she
Yes.
was talking about her journey with therapy. And she had lost her when she was 12. She lost her 22-year-old brother,
Mm.
and her therapist kept trying to bring it back up. And she would say, "Do we have to keep going back to him? It's done. I'm over it. That kind of thing." And after a bunch of therapy, they figured out that her response to things from that point forward were as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So, like I'm thinking like most people that have any traumatic experience will be stuck there for the longest time until it's identified. Because I think I know my sister was 21, went through a horrible accident, and I think now that I think about it, I think that's how she reacts to things, I should say, as a 21-year-old. But, how you can't it's an interesting concept, let's put it that way, an interesting path to go down to even yourself, like, where was your biggest trauma, and is that how I am behaving now? That memory of just staying stuck right there, I thought was interesting.
So the enlightened part is to be able to have that question. That's absolutely marvelous.
Right.
Like, what's up with that? The answer isn't necessarily all that cool, but I mean, who cares? But just
Well, I think it's to
going
help
into the questioning mode, it takes you out of that situation for a moment. Like,
exactly. So you question it, you're back to, now. I mean, it's just like the constant curiosity thing. Like, I mean, if that could help you, you know, that creativity and thinking again. So always going back to something that might be a little better than it was yesterday, kind of thing, like we always talk about. And if that's asking yourself the hard questions, then go for it. We can do hard things, as Glennon Doyle will say.
And the word that's coming to mind is curiosity, with an element of curiosity, as Lisa's speaking, with an inquiry, like that curious mind. Like, isn't, as my friend used to say, I used to have a mentor who used to say to me all the time, isn't that interesting? Like, when you would do something and then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh, I responded that way. Isn't that interesting? And it's kind of very, kind of not like very almost funny way of like it with a gentleness or a compassionate way. Like, oh gosh, that's really interesting that I did that.
Yeah, those emotions that come up that Bill was talking about. Like, so you feel a little anger or anxious, like, hello, anxiety. How are you today?
Yeah.
That's an
Hello,
interesting,
darkness,
that's
my
an
old
interesting
friend.
response to that.
Exactly.
Oh, hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the Soundgarden version myself. Well, ladies, we've had a marvelous chat. Is there anything that you'd like to say to kind of put a wrap or a point or?
I think ultimately I'd like to just get people to look at how creative they are throughout their day and commend yourself for being so, and see how you can just do it a little bit more tomorrow or in the next moment.
No, I don't. I'm good, and I'm gonna do what Lisa said.
Yeah, when you pack your lunch, make sure you bring yourself a crutch phrase to get you out of jail, right? You get angry or you get sad or something's kind of taking you over. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely love it. Well, folks, we are lighting the candle, a world that works. I've had a marvelous conversation with my two friends today. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I also want to put my challenge back out there. Will you please contact somebody, email, text, phone call, let them know the world's better because they're there and that you care about them and it matters to you that they're around. And in the meantime, you continue to have the best day ever and bring some empowerment your way. Love you all and be well.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week as well as the rest of the network at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.